potatoes is a dish originated in France called pomme fondant or melting potatoes. Now, fondant potatoes is something really special because they have such a unique texture and they're sort of really fluffy, soft inside and quite chewy outside, and that usually packed with flavor coming from the herbs, the fats and the vegetables that you can add to it, but more about that later. Now they're perfect extra special side garnish for a dinner, and although they look a little bit chefy, they're actually much simpler to do than, for example, roast potatoes. And you will find that fondant potatoes are served up by the best chefs in the world. Throughout the world you will find them in several Michelin Star restaurants. Now I learned how to make them from Michel at his 3 Michelin Star restaurant at the Waterside Inn, and when I worked for the 3 Michelin Star chef Marco Pierre White, they were also a regular throughout all his restaurants, of whom I was lucky enough to manage a few of them. And on one of the 3 occasions when I cooked for the Queen of England, fondant potatoes also played a part in her menu that was served to Queen Elizabeth. So what are fondant potatoes? Fondant potatoes are potatoes that you usually cut into cylinders and you cook them in some water or some stock, and you add some fat to it, and then you boil them, and then you cook away the liquid, and then you actually end up pan roasting them. And then you let them stand for quite a while so they can absorb their cooking fat, or some of it, and that makes them so waxy and so creamy with that pure intense potato flavor. So the potatoes you need to use a firm flesh potato. That means a potato that doesn't fall apart. So mashing potato is not ideal. You need to use something that holds together, like a good boiling potato would be brilliant. I know those potato dishes, the fondant potatoes, are a favorite of so many Michelin Star restaurants, and they love them. And they love to put them onto their plates and on their food because they look so pretty and they can really improve a dish. However, there are 2 schools of making them, and one of them I show you today, which is the one that's worse for Michelin Star dinner. The other version I recommend to avoid, because that is the version where you cook the potatoes without fluids, and the end result will be literally chewy, dry, often a bit rubbery. So the dry version, forget about it. It is the wet version that you want to do, which I will show you in this recipe. Now there's another version where potatoes are first browned and then cooked in stock, which in my opinion is a total mess because everything gets brown and discolored and it ends up like an ugly looking mess. But I guess in today's world of some food bloggers who constantly try to reinvent the wheel and change things around and so that they just have a different angle or a new, more edgy version of something, the end result is the one that suffers, and sometimes it's so far removed from the real thing that it actually should be called something different, that it doesn't deserve the name of the original idea or cooking techniques. Now, as I said, that's the only way you should cook them. Regards the liquids, you can use water, you can use stock. If you only use water, then season it strongly with flavors like herbs or garlic or shallots, and indeed you could just fondant or cook vegetables with the same method with other vegetables, but you can learn more about that in my online courses. Now when you use stock, make sure it's not too protein rich, as you might struggle a little bit with burning the proteins towards the end. So a lighter stock will be better, but I also often saw chefs just adding sort of chicken bouillon cubes with water instead of the stock. And the 3 Michelin Star chef Marco Pierre White, which I worked for, is an advocate for that, as I know from my personal experience cooking with him. However, this recipe is the real thing. It's a simple showstopper of a side dish that shows that French cooking doesn't have to be fussy, and it can be quite simple and being at the same time very spectacular. Now on a final note, I need to tell you that you can cook those potatoes for an hour or two in advance and then reheat it by simply placing the whole pot into a preheated oven for around 10 or 15 minutes or so. But you have to be very careful that when you pre-cook them and reheat them later on, that you do not cover the pot, because if you put a lid on it or you cover it with something, it will most likely create condensation in the pot, and the water-like liquids will dissolve the roasting bits on the bottom of the pot, and the potatoes will lose their glaze and shining appearance and start to basically become unpleasantly brown. Now, if you obviously wonder, because the pot gets sort of quite brown, to wash the pot, you simply soak it in water for approximately half an hour or so, and then you wipe the brown bits out. So you basically just clean it with water. So enjoy the video. So here we go. That's how they should look at the end. And I will now show you exactly how it's done. So the first thing you need to do, you obviously need to get a strong heat, because you need to boil those potatoes fairly fast. If you boil them too slow, they might start to fall apart. So first, add some butter to the pot. Now you can of course use other fats as well. Duck fat obviously is really good. You can also make them with olive oil, but my favorite version is butter. And then you just place some garlic in there as well. And the garlic would be really nice to it will caramelize as well. It's going to give a really nice flavor to the potatoes, and it will be pretty spectacular just to eat the garlic on its own at the end. So then place the potatoes in the pot, then add some water or add some light chicken stock. You can of course use fish stock as well if you serve it as a fish dish. Then herbs, rosemary, thyme, oregano. You can use other spices as well if that's what you want to do. Salt, so you need to put enough salt in there to season those potatoes, because you need to think in the end there will be no liquid left. Then place a lid on it and bring it to the boil. So cook it now for approximately 15 minutes or so, until the potatoes are almost cooked. So you need to check them, and when you check them, then they basically should be really nice and soft when you come to that stage. If they're still hard, then you could add water at that stage before they brown. Once they start browning, you cannot add any more water. So in my case, they're still not fully cooked, they haven't started browning, so add a little bit more water, and that will literally just cook them all the way through. So now, once the potatoes are just cooked through, you remove the lid, you increase the heat, and then you basically wait until the butter or the fat and the water separate themselves, meaning that all the water has evaporated and what's left is just the butter, and then you start to fry those potatoes like you see now. So you need to fry them quite a bit. And the problem with those potatoes obviously is, which I will tell you in a minute, you have to let them stand after a while. So how much color do you build up? You literally can see around the potatoes how dark brown your pot is. So you want to get it almost as dark as you can. You just want to get it to that brownness where you just before burning. So can you see how dark brown that is? That's exactly what I want. Yeah, the fat. So if you say you have a lot of fat, as I told you that before, the potatoes will absorb a little bit of fat during the resting time, but you can indeed strain the fat off afterwards and use it for cooking a steak or making your roast potatoes, or use it for the next batch, of course. So now you need to let them stand. So it's very important. If you try to get them out of the pan straight away, it's not going to work, because the potatoes will stick firmly to the bottom of the pot. So you need to give it approximately 10 to 15 minutes. And during that time, there will be condensation building up, coming from the potatoes. There's a lot of moisture in the potatoes still, so basically a bit of condensation will be building up, and that will allow you to take the potatoes out just like you see now. Now I hope you'll enjoy that video. As I said, I cooked those potatoes myself for the Queen of England, and I think she enjoyed it. I haven't spoken to her afterwards, but you never really know when she comes along. So it's all you really know is there's a lot of security around, and you don't know who's going to show up, and you actually find out afterwards if she was in your restaurant or not. So here we go. Now there's the garlic on the top. So if you liked it, please subscribe to my channel, and I look forward to seeing you at my next video.